Coming up on episode 293 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the all-new Toyota Prius Prime, the Ford Expedition, the Mercedes-Benz EQE SUV, the Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid, the 2024 Jeep Wrangler refresh, and also the Ram 1500 Rev, the new Hyundai Kona and Kia EV9, streaking in front of your Tesla, and Cruise versus Waymo. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 293 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
I'm Nicole Wakeland from, we're going to go with True Car this week.
And I am Roberto Baldwin from Engadget.
Let's begin with Nicole.
Oh, you're terrible. You did that to me just because I said I literally just said to him, everyone, I'm still pulling up the details because I don't have them on Roni. Let's start with Nicole. You shaking my fist at the screen. Okay. I have a 2022 Ford Expedition this week, which is gigantic.
A big truck.
It's big truck. So everything about it, I'm like, it's big. Seats are big. Stepping up is big. Back seats are big. Third row. Guess what? Big. Everything
big.
Is big about this.
But you know what?
Yeah.
It's not as big as a Wagoneer.
It is. Is it not really as big as a
It's like 4 inches shorter.
Wait, then the Wagoneer or the Grand Wagoneer?
Both. I mean, the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer
they're the
are the same
same. I'm
dimensions,
thinking XL. Yeah.
So the Wagoneers are 4 inches longer than the Expedition and 4 inches wider.
It definitely, the Wagoneer feels like it feels on a highway, like driving through the tunnel in Logan, the Wagoneer feels like you're going to take sidewall with you. This, when I drove it through the Sumner Tunnel, did not feel quite as scary. So there you go. So it is huge. And I did exactly say, I feel like when you have a pickup truck, you have to haul mulch. But when you have a great big SUV, you have to like make a dump run with stuff. You have to find stuff that you've been trying to get rid of.
You got to make friends. That's my problem because I don't really have a lot of friends. So then I'm like, oh no, who wants to go riding around? None of my friends want to go drive around in a car anymore with me.
Even though
we're done with that.
Yeah, even though it's Easter and like everyone's in town, we didn't all go anywhere together. We like met at places. So I didn't need all of this passenger seating, but I did need the cargo room because we purchased a new bedroom set several weeks ago. And the old one was sitting in the garage with the hopes that at some point I would get a vehicle large enough to take it. So my daughter, who's home from college, I said, instead of being a lazy bum and just sitting here, guess what you're going to help mom do? So she helped me load this up. And here's the thing. I really wasn't sure. Like we had a full, like a standard dresser, like a long dresser. And I thought, is this actually going to fit? Like, am I going to get it in there? But like when I go to shut the tailgate, the edge of the tailgate's going to press back on it. No, it fit into there. It fit. And then we stacked stuff at the end of it still. We had like dresser drawers still stacked at the end and it still fit. So it was a dresser, all the drawers, one of the bedside tables, a mirror, all the long pieces from our king size bed, because we got a whole new bed and everything, all fit. And there was still room. I just thought, oh my gosh, I don't even need to know the number. You guys, you can shove an entire bedroom set into the back.
That's all you need to know.
That should summarize it right there, like a visual representation. Imagine cramming all that back in and still having room. So we brought all that to get rid of. So I was pretty impressed with the cargo room. I actually really liked getting into the third row. So it's a big SUV. So it's not like some of those, mid-size SUVs or crossovers that have a third row that
cram a third row in.
That like you, Robbie, could never hope to get into the third row unless your life
for
depended
babies.
on it. It's for babies. Yes. This one, it actually, you could sit back there, and even better, the way the step in, like the space to step in, because that's the other thing. Even if you can sit down, if getting into it is like you have to contort yourself around the seats and it's awkward, you can't like get in there. But this one, the seat does the usual, tips forward and slides, but it really slides forward. I mean, there's plenty of room to just literally put your hand on the seat, put your hand on the frame of the car, and just step right in. You don't have to even turn sideways. You can literally just step straight in, which is kind of neat. I thought that would actually make it a usable third row, because most of the time they really aren't. And if you had kids that were climbing back there, it's light enough that once you flip that back and you push it, like a kid could even do that. Like, someone who's not in a little baby seat that needs to be buckled, but still even needs a car seat or just wants to hop in the back, it's easy enough to do. So I appreciate that. A family vehicle made to haul stuff and haul people that can actually easily haul stuff and haul people.
I
And
always think about the
What?
little kids who are like 7, who you
Yeah.
see them just like they want to sit in the third row and they're just like like heaving.
Yeah.
They're doing like weight training,
It's
or
like-
like they're like in really great. Those kids are future Olympians.
exactly, the future Olympians. That's the trying to move the seats around. The other thing that I thought was neat, and I don't think most, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but there's 3 rows, so you have buttons in the back that you can release all the rows, so you don't have to go running around pulling latches and stuff.
You mean from the cargo area?
From the cargo
Okay,
area.
yeah.
So, but for the third row, it's 2 buttons and it goes down like 60-40. Poomph, poomph, 2 different pieces. But for the second row, it's actually 3 pieces. There's a left, a right, and a middle. There's a button for each one. So you
can put down just the center section.
there's a center.
Yeah,
So people
so
can-
you can
Oh, that's
pick.
nice.
I don't recall seeing that before. So it's like you can literally do the left, the right, the middle, whichever order you want to do them in, you can do them in. Like if you just want one, you just want the left side in the middle.
I remember I think old Suburbans maybe had that.
Possibly.
I remember like back in the 80s or 90s, somebody had like one of my friend's parents had one that you could do in the middle, and I thought that was really cool.
It was really neat that you could just flip down the middle seat if you wanted, and then you could have something long pass through from the back, but still have 2 full seats on either side. I thought that was kind of neat. I mean, if you're someone who's buying this and you want all this space, and clearly you have plans to put all sorts of stuff and people in there, and I thought that was one extra little piece of versatility to let you carry whatever kind of like complications of people and cargo that you want. So I appreciated that. I thought that was neat. Comfy car, huge. It has a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V6 that I didn't yet look up the numbers because Sam was too fast making me go first.
Too fast.
But it's fair to.
I think it's 440. I think it's 440 horsepower.
I think it is. It says there's. I got this. That's with a Stealth Performance brings here. I found it. Stealth Performance brings it up to 440, and I think I did actually have that because I had the fancy red brake calipers on mine. It's very fancy.
Very stealthy.
Very stealthy.
Wait,
You'd never
red?
notice the bright.
There's the stealth
red.
package, but it has red.
I think the stealth package
Okay.
actually adds red.
The opposite of stealth.
Details, Robbie. Details. But I mean, it's got plenty of power. And if you hit the gas pedal and the thing moves, there's no hesitation getting up to highway speeds or anything. Even when I was had it full up with the bedroom set, we have to get on the highway for a few minutes to get rid of it. It accelerates fine. It was like, whatever, put another bedroom set in there. Didn't care. And it also does it relatively quietly. Like this isn't a car where you necessarily want to hear the engine. It's not a performance vehicle or a sports car where you're looking for that as part of the experience. You hear it, it's working, it's doing its thing, but it's never this intrusive, angry sound that's going to disturb like the kids that are trying to sleep in the second and third row, which is also a nice thing in an SUV. So I really like it. Now I don't have a Monroney, so I don't have all the pricing broken out. But it starts for your cheap version for the 22 at about $55,000 and tops out at $80,900. So in the 80,000-ish range. And that platinum is actually more expensive than what I believe was what I was driving, which was a limited Stealth Performance, which is like a couple $1,000s less with its stealthy red brake calipers. Yeah. And you get the giant touchscreen like that. That 15, what I think it's 15.5 inch, like vertical.
The same one that's in the Mach-E.
Yeah, the same one that's in the Mach-E, which I still have a little the dial that controls the volume. I still find it looks like like the puck from an air hockey table. Like I should be able to slide it around, like kapoong, kapoong, and like knock stuff around, like it should move. But it is easy to use. The only thing that this might just be how I grab onto the dial. It's not very deep. I mean, it's raised like, I don't know, maybe a half an inch or something from the actual screen itself for you to grip onto it. But if you're not careful when you grip it, it's the touch screen is right behind it. And you can very easily accidentally touch things on the screen behind it. So you've not meant to do anything except adjust the volume or touch that control. Instead, you've also touched some touch screen stuff. So it just takes a little finessing to get used to. Like you have to just grab the edges of it. If you grab too far in, you will accidentally do stuff on the touch screen.
Whoopsie.
So that was, I'm not a super big fan of that little control knob mostly for that reason, because I just find that
It looks slick though. It's like
it looks
there.
kind of, but do you
Like,
not see the air hockey
Yeah.
cable thing? Does
Yeah,
it look
no,
like you should be able to slide it around? Like
I think
maybe
I just like it. I think I'm just enamored with like, oh look, there's a circle in the middle of the touchscreen. That's literally it. How helpful is it? I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know, but it looks really cool. Check it out, dude.
Cool.
The GMC is putting the same thing on the Sierra EV. I mean, it's literally the exact same
Is it
kind
really?
of system. Yeah, it's glued onto the screen.
Yeah.
You know, and the knob itself acts as a capacitive controller. So if you pried the knob off, you could, or if it fell off, you know, by accident or wasn't properly glued on, you could just use your finger on there and do
and just swipe it around
like an iPod.
Yeah,
like the capacitive touch iPod wheel.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you could see, me and Robbie are now making little circles.
We're making
just in
the
case
little
Sam
circles,
doesn't know
and
what
we
that
all
looks
remember.
like.
No,
We're
I
making
know
little
what it
circles
looks
on
like
the
because I
screen.
still have one of those iPods in a drawer upstairs.
I have one.
Wow.
I'm always trying to get to work. Like I used to have a bunch of them. I don't know where they all went. Because I used to buy them and fix them.
Yeah.
Did you really?
People would get their iPod and then it would break, and then I would buy them for like $30-$40, and they'd always be sad because the iPod was like this one thing that had everything. It had your entire personality was in this little white
that iPod,
box.
that little tiny white square.
And so I would go to their house and pick it up, and they'd be like, "I'm kind of sad." I'm like, "Yeah, I get that a lot." I'm like, "Here's your $20," and then I take it home and then I fix them. Because usually like there was a battery issue,
battery in there,
or there was an issue
drive.
where you had like just a little bit of pressure. So if you put a business card in there, it would make it work again. Like you'd open it up, shove a business card in it, close it, and then it would work for like a good 8-9 more months.
That was your fix?
Did you ever take one of those and put like an SD card in there in place of the little 1.8 inch hard drive?
I haven't. I have a couple. I want to do that with the ones I have somewhere around the house. We have but they're great because you can still like you just plug it in, and now I just use old iPhones for iPods. I just put everything on the iPhone.
Old iPhones. I don't have any old tech. I throw it away as soon as it's done with its useful life and the new one has come to my home. I'm like, goodbye, old one. Yeah.
No. Everything still has a useful life somewhere, somehow, eventually. Yeah. It's just a matter of time until you discover what that new use is.
The giant tubs of random electronics that my husband has kept over the years are testament to that.
Is it cables?
Cables, so many cables.
Has he told your daughter that one day all of this will be hers?
Right? One day
you will have FireWire cables and FireWire 800 cables.
Well, every now and then he pulls it like, what even is this? And he's like, oh yeah, we don't need this. No, this is old stuff. I'm like, oh, what is this from 1975? Yeah. You're finally getting rid of it, go husband.
You never know when you're
FireWire PCI cards in there that you can
put into an old computer. There. I don't even know what's in. Probably whatever that is, Sam. I'm sure he has one.
Oh, FireWire. All the FireWire stuff for music stuff used to be like super expensive, and now you can get it for like a nickel.
Oh, jeez.
Because it was just like for a limited amount of time, for a few years, FireWire was everything, and then they're like, oh, we can just make USB faster. Like,
And then Intel couldn't charge a huge licensing fee for it because that was their technology. And,
yeah. Poor Intel.
Well.
I think they'll be fine. They seem to be.
They'll be okay.
They're struggling a little bit financially.
They've been struggling for like 15, 20 years though.
Yeah. All right. What did you drive, Mr. Baldwin?
So I flew to Portugal, where everyone speaks Portuguese and not Spanish, which breaks my brain, by the way. My mom is Mexican, so I speak some Spanish. And so when people are speaking Portuguese, my brain immediately tries to figure out what they're saying, and it does not work. Anyway, Portugal is wonderful. You should go visit. While I was there, I drove the EQE SUV. This is the smaller luxury SUV, electric SUV from Mercedes-Benz. It has most of the major stuff you want from the EQS, but in a smaller package. You can get it with rear wheel steering. It's optional though. It's not like you don't get it for free on the SUV. But here's the thing. It's not an exciting car. It's not like whoa yeah. It's not like the EV6 GT or Ioniq 5. But it does sort of it fulfills the promise of luxury in an electric SUV from Mercedes-Benz, and that's really all it needs to do. And it's kind of like the E-Class. It's just like it's not an S-Class, but you're still going to get a nice little, you're getting a nice car, and that's essentially it's a nice car, and you're there with all these people, all these other journalists, and we're all, you eventually start talking about the car, and you're like, it's not exciting, it's not like really sporty, and, you can get to 500 or to 350. But no one's flying around corners in this thing. No one's like, yeah, I'm riding 10/10. You're driving around town. You're picking up the kids from the private school. You're throwing lacrosse sticks. I don't know if they're called. Are they called sticks? Yes. Anyway, I'm assuming people who buy Mercedes, their kids play lacrosse. That's my guess. Or soccer, and you're throwing it in the back.
Lacrosse sticks. Just you were correct.
Sticks. Thank you.
I googled. Lacrosse sticks.
There's plenty of there's plenty of headroom, which is one of the problems I have with the EQ sedans, especially in the rear seats. You got to be kind of careful back there, because if you're tall, you're hitting your head. The SUVs that's why I think the SUVs are a better proposition for most people, just because part of that Mercedes-Benz luxury thing is that it's luxury for everyone. It's not just the driver. I will say that you can get the 350 Plus, which is a rear-wheel drive vehicle, or you can get the 350, which is the 4MATIC all-wheel drive, and they are both the exact same price. Which is, I should have pulled up my bits of information to me. Nope, that's the wrong car. Sorry. I almost talked about a car I'm not allowed to talk about.
Oh, you would have broken an embargo.
I would have broken it. That would have broken that hurts my heart thinking about doing that.
Hurts your heart.
It does.
The pain.
$77,900. So you can get the 350 plus, just a regular, it's rear-wheel drive, or you can get the 350 all-matic for the exact same price. So here's the rub. So the 350 Plus has where's the range? 269. Nope, that's wrong. 253. Nope, that's wrong too. Oh no, that's right. 200. That's all right. It's 253 miles of range, but 350. The 4MATIC has 279 miles of range. Nope, wait. 350 for the regular one, 279 for the.
At this point, guys, I would distrust everything.
Oh, you know what? Everything I'm saying is a lie. I'm looking. The problem is that I'm looking at a script and not at a written up thing, and then by the time I actually read it out loud, I know the thing by heart, so I don't even bother looking at the who's it. Here we go. Now we're going to get you some real numbers. I got the old press release.
Oh, there we go. The official.
The official. Here we go. If you get the EQE 350 Plus, this is the rear-wheel drive. It's 279 miles of range. You get the 354 MATIC, 253 miles of range. Those vehicles, both $77,900. If you get the 500, this is the more powerful vehicle, it gets 269 miles of range. So it's like right in the middle between the two. But it starts at $89,500. So you're spending about $12,000 more for this vehicle. And to be completely honest, you don't need the 500 power. I mean, it's there. I drove it. I drove all three of these vehicles.
It did.
Just save the $12,000 and throw like all-wheel steering on your 350. Done.
That's what you would do. That's how you'd spec it out.
That's how I would spec it out. They all come with a 90.6 kilowatt hour battery pack, and they all charge at 170 kilowatts at a DC compatible DC fast charger, which isn't great when you look at things from Hyundai, but Mercedes is still rolling that 400 volt system, which is
the reality is, any public charging station you go to, odds are it's probably not going to be pumping out that much.
That's all
anyway.
You're going to get anyway.
You're going to get that much.
You'll be lucky to get 170.
Yeah,
especially if it's Electrify America.
So there's that. The power differences between the vehicle, the 350 and the 350 Plus, the 350 4MATIC and 350 Plus both have 288 horsepower. The 4MATIC with the one with the extra all-wheel drive with the extra motor up front has 564 pound-feet of torque, while the rear-wheel drive only has 417. I'm going to tell you the numbers for the 500, but who cares? It's 402 horsepower, 633 pound-feet of torque. Again, you really just don't need it. You don't. I mean, you can get it because you can say, I have a 500. You can point at the badge, or maybe you can just buy the 350 and
Point
throw
at the badge. What'd you
badge.
get? I got that.
I got that. Yeah. No, this is not again, I'm going to tell you, it's not a performance vehicle. I don't know why you would need them more power to just cruise around town and just have a nice time and be comfortable. So yeah, I like the vehicle. I think it fits well in their EQ lineup. I still wish Mercedes would hurry up and get onto their. I think they're going 900 volt. I think they're they're jumping past 800.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's going to be in their 2025 vehicles.
Yeah, because when you talk about the EQ XX, that's a 900 volt vehicle, and they're like, yeah, everything that's in there is going to make it to our other stuff. So you're like, okay. They're like, wink, wink, wink. I'm actually doing a wink for no reason.
Yeah, no, that's good.
We can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah,
Sam and I appreciate it.
So the also it has the hyper screen, which again, it has a 12 point. You can get the regular 12.8 portrait screen. It's a little portrait screen, sits in the middle. Nice, just flat regular dash. Just get that. The hyper screen.
How much extra do they charge for that?
Oh, I don't have the numbers on that, unfortunately. They didn't give us that information. But unless you really, absolutely, positively have to have a passenger screen, don't get it. Just get the regular screen. I will say that using, I think it's Zinc, the video streaming service that they're using, it's like a third party.
Oh, okay.
While I was driving around, I was able to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once in the passenger screen.
Did you like that movie?
I love that movie.
I did.
Oh, Nicole didn't like it.
I did not.
Michelle Yeoh is great.
I know. It's too much, huh?
Mm.
Too much. What was the hands thing?
The little hot dog finger
too much.
thing.
Oh, the hot dog finger thing. You're like, no. Once that happened,
I'm done. What the heck? Yeah.
Anyway, so I watched that movie, much to the chagrin of. The hyper screen, it's, I don't know, if you dig it and you really want to watch a video and for some reason you don't own an iPad or an iPhone, then go for it. You have to use Bluetooth headset to listen to it, and they have a setting so if the driver tries to watch it, it turns it off. So I was in the car with Tim Stevens and he kept trying to test it, so I kept turning off my movie. Thanks a lot, Tim. MBUX is still probably one of the best infotainment systems out there on the market, and their voice assistant for me is still probably the best. I've always had good luck with it. So yeah, EQE SUV, and it's getting kind of difficult with these names because there's EQS, EQS SUV, EQE, EQE.
I have a feeling.
So I'm doing video, and I just keep saying AQS. I'm like.
I have a feeling that in the next few years, as more manufacturers have more and more EVs in their lineups, they're just going to start dropping these EV special sub brands. Like Mercedes
at some
will go
point
away
you
from
have
EQ,
to just they just have to be part of the lineup.
Hyundai will go away from Ioniq, and and it'll just be it'll be like Kona EV, or E-Class EV.
Yeah. Or just E-Class at some point. That's just the E-Class, and then they'll have because
there won't be a gas version.
Yeah, there won't be a gas version. So for now, it's just a little confusing. But in the future, it'll be less confusing. EQE SUV, a nice luxury SUV from Mercedes-Benz. That's exactly what it is. It's a nice time.
That works. A luxury SUV from Mercedes. Sure.
All right. Hey, Wheel Bearings listeners, it's Sam. And as I'm recording this, we're getting ready to head out tomorrow for a vacation trip in Hawaii. And one of the great things about going to Hawaii is all the fresh fish and the Asian-inspired food. We just love it there. We love eating the food there. And when we get back, we still love to eat that same kind of food, food of the Pacific Islands. And this May, HelloFresh is helping by celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So for a limited time only, you can get some of that same kind of food with limited time, authentic recipes created in partnership with Chef Serbi Sani of New York's Tagmo restaurant, who's creating a special cultural taste tour right in your own kitchen. After May is over, as we get into the summer months, you're probably going to be having friends over for parties and everything. So if you're hosting a get-together, check out HelloFresh Market for crowd-pleasing appetizers, snacks, sides, and more for your next gathering. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of hassle putting everything together as you get your friends together in the backyard. The best part, you can skip that extra trip to the grocery store. All you have to do is go to hellofresh.com/wheelbearings16, that's wheelbearings16, and use the coupon code wheelbearings16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. Remember, go to hellofresh.com/wheelbearings16 and use the coupon code wheelbearings16, that's wheelbearings16, for 16 free meals with free shipping. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. So if you haven't tried it yet, now's the perfect opportunity to get 16 free meals. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. Well, over the last couple of weeks, I was in between going to California for 5 days to drive some cars and then going to the New York Auto Show. I was only home for a few days. And so I didn't have anything scheduled during that interim, but I'm going to talk about the third generation Chevrolet Volt, also known as the 2023 Toyota Prius Prime.
You got us.
Because basically, if General Motors had not discontinued the Volt, right about now they would be ready for a Gen 3, because the Gen 2 came out in 2016. Gen 3 would be out about now, and I think that it would be very much like what the Prius Prime is.
Even the looks, I think it would probably even look
exactly
like this.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the specs, the dimensions and everything. This car is so close to the dimensions of what the Volt was in terms of length and width and everything and height. And, the way that they have evolved the Prius, this generation of Prius, compared to what it was in the past, it has shifted much more towards, kind of the sportier styling of the Volt. The Prius Prime's got an even bigger battery than it had before. Depending on the trim level, you can have up to 44 miles of electric range on the plug-in hybrid. The electric power levels, each generation, the first gen plug-in Prius, the PHV that came out in like 2011, that thing was kind of a dud. It had like a 4 kilowatt hour battery. It would nominally go about 8 or 9 miles on a charge, but it had so little electrical power that you really couldn't. I mean, you would have to be extremely light on the pedal to get it to actually stay in electric mode and not turn on the engine.
You got a nice downhill start.
Yeah. And then the second gen got a lot better, but it looked ridiculous. And now this third gen, is the first really attractive Prius. And we talked about it before. I think both of you drove or at least one of you drove the regular hybrid Prius last fall. But if you think back about a year ago, before we went to the Toyota Palooza in Plano last June, I think at some point we had talked about why does Toyota even need a Prius anymore? Because sales of the Prius have been declining for years. That I talked to Mike Tripp, who's the VP of Marketing Communications for the Toyota brand. And one of the things that they talked about is that the 25% of all Toyota brand sales in North America now are hybrids. And
how much? 25%?
Just shy of 25%.
Wow.
And for Lexus, it's almost 40%. And for models like the Corolla, The Corolla is almost 44% hybrid now. Yeah. So you've got the Corolla hybrid that had the exact same powertrain as what was in the Prius, basically the same size car, less controversial design, and basically the same fuel economy as the Prius and about the same price. So why would you buy the Prius? So it was a big question of, okay, if we're going to do another generation of Prius, what do we do with it? And the thing that Mike focused on was, well, we want it to be our technology leader. And so they put some stuff in here that, is trying to move the Toyota brand forward. So it's got traffic jam assist, which is their hands-free system that unfortunately only works up to like 25 miles an hour. But it does have a driver monitor system, an infrared driver monitor, and a bunch of other stuff. And it's geofenced to highways. So it's basically like Super Cruise that only works to 25 miles an hour. At some point in the future, might do more. We'll see. The Prime as the plug-in hybrid, it's now like a 13.5 kilowatt hour battery pack. It's got 160 horsepower from the electric motor, which is more than the Volt ever had. It was 150. And with the combined electric motor and the gas engine, it's 220 horsepower. So it's reasonably quick. The only, and the other big advantage that this has over the Volt, because it had this T-shaped battery, always had this big giant center tunnel. And the second generation Volt, they kind of put some padding on the top. The first generation Volt was strictly a 4-seater. The second gen, they put some padding on the top of that and a third seat belt in the back seat, but it wasn't really useful for humans. And you'd have to sit straddling this battery tunnel. The Prius Prime, the battery is entirely under the back seat and a little bit into the cargo area. And so you've got full floor space in the back seat, which is really nice. The only downside really is that because it's now 2 inches lower than the old Prius was, because one of the things about the old Prius, it was, for a small car, it was surprisingly roomy because the shape, when you looked at it in profile, the roof line kind of went up and had a big arc back down to the tail again. And so you had a fair amount of headroom even in the back seat in that thing. In this one, you don't. If you're tall, like Robbie, you would probably have I don't know. Did you drive the Prius or the Prime?
I haven't driven the Prius Prime yet. No.
Okay. You would probably have a tough time in the back seat. I got in the back seat. My head was just barely touching the headliner. Plenty of leg room, but not a lot of headroom. And so that could be a problem for some people. The other main complaint I had about it is they went with basically the same. So the Priuses in the past always had this long, narrow strip across the center of the dash for the gauges and nothing in front of the driver. So they got rid of that, and they have an instrument cluster, a digital instrument cluster in front of the driver. But it's the same basic setup that they have in the BZ4X. So you've got this digital display, and the plastic looks like a tunnel kind of leading towards it. And it sits up above the steering wheel, and depending on how you sit, the steering wheel may or may not be cutting off the bottom part of that display.
I found that, and I swear I actually had people asking about this when I shared pictures of this online, and people were saying, like, is it any easier to see than the BZ4X? I'm like, no.
Well,
it's
for me, it was because the seating position and everything. So it depends on your body.
It does, but if you're not I don't know if you're. I think it's a combination of like exactly where you put your seat. Like somebody could be exactly my height, but if they sit a little higher or a little lower or a little closer, it's this very like. And I kept trying to adjust everything, Sam. It was like,
I know it's a very personal thing.
Adjust the seat. I could not. I can get it where I can see most of what I want to see, but I also feel like then if I can see it all, I'm not quite driving at the angle that I want to be driving at. But I sort of went like, okay, I'm only driving this for a short time, right? We're on a trip. If I was driving it for hours and hours and hours, would I get used to wherever I put the seating position? Do you know what I mean? When I just sort of get comfy, but I couldn't quite get it.
Couldn't find the sweet spot.
I could not find the sweet spot.
Yeah. So in the BZ4X, I did have that problem. And of course, the BZ4X is a little bit taller. It's laid out a little bit differently. And so I could not find a position where the steering wheel was not cutting off the cluster for me in the 4X. But in the Prius, I could. But I know a bunch of other people I talked to that were on the same wave. Some were fine with it. Some, were having it cutting off the cluster. So I think Toyota needs to rethink this approach, or if they're going to do this type of thing, they need to just put the cluster up even higher, so that no matter where you sit, it's always going to be completely visible. Because there's too many. It depends too much on your body proportions. How you sit, and your torso to leg length and arm length and all this stuff. For it seems like about half of people are going to have the steering wheel cutting off the cluster, and the other half are going to be fine.
I think that's right. I think it's about a 50-50 split. You're either totally fine with it, you're like, I don't get what everyone's complaining about, or you sit down and go, what the heck? You just can't tell.
And then, the other issue is, when you look at it in profile, as I said, the roof line is lower than before. And, there's kind of an almost continuous line from the front bumper, up into the roof, and the windshield is raked back pretty far, which looks, from an aesthetic standpoint, it looks pretty cool. It looks sporty. But I know for a lot of people, they had a hard time getting in and out of it. I know one friend of mine, who shall remain unnamed, when he got into the seat, he's just say of a slightly more substantial girth. But he could not, without tilting his head sideways, under the door opening, he could not then reach out and grab the door to pull the door shut. So it was very awkward getting in and out. So, if you're going to consider the Prius, and this goes for both the hybrid and the Prime, if you're going to consider the new Prius, you absolutely will want to make sure you get to a dealer, sit in one, drive it, get everything set up the way you want in terms of steering wheel, seating, mirrors, and everything, and make sure that it fits you. Because if it fits you, it's great. If it doesn't, you are going to hate it. So make sure you try it on for size, because this is one of those cars that it's for a lot of people, it's just not going to fit right. And, that's the way it is. And, that's why you absolutely need to go check everything out in person before you sign for, a $30,000 to $40,000 car.
For the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many years.
Yeah, I know. People are like, I'm going to order this. I'm going to pre-order a car, and I'm just like, oh, have you gotten a car? Have you sat in the car? And they're like, no, I'm just going to buy it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't ever do that.
If you're the type of person who's like, if you're getting a Bronco, something you could flip.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, all right, fine, because you're going to be able to flip it. But if you're like, oh, I'm going to get the new, Prius Prime, I don't think people are going to be flipping Prius Primes.
You don't think?
Yeah, I don't think it's it's just it's the Prius Prime. It looks really cool, but I don't. Yeah, and then you get it, and you're like, oh, I'm stuck with this thing for 3 to 5, 7, however, for years. And now I'm very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable in this car.
I'm sad.
So
it's fine.
The Prius Prime comes in 3 trim levels: the SE with 17-inch wheels, or the XSE and XSE Premium with 19-inch wheels. If you get the SE, it has 44 miles of electric range, and it gets 52 miles per gallon combined in hybrid mode. If you get the XSE or XSE Premium with the bigger wheels, you get 39 miles of electric range and 48 miles per gallon, which is still excellent. So you're looking at 40 miles, and I drove the XSE Premium and an XSE on a rainy day in Southern California, and I was averaging 3.1, 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour, which worked out to just over 40 miles per gallon, or 40 miles of electric range on a full charge, because it was at like 94% when I took it out, and it's about 14% when I brought it back. You can easily drive it in electric mode, 160 horsepower electric. That's enough. As long as you're not, doing drag racing starts all the time, you will be able to drive it, for 40 miles on electricity alone, which will, for most people, means you will almost never have to put gas in this thing, which is great. Pricing starts at $32,350 for the SE, goes up to $39,170 for the XSE Premium. And since this was a first drive, we didn't have Monronis or anything. But do you want to take a guess at the destination charge that Toyota charges?
$995. Ooh, look at the same time.
$1,295 and $1,200.
I said $995.
Oh, $995. Oh, Nicole wins. It's $1,095.
Yay, Nicole!
Go me.
I'm just happy when you win.
So all in, all in on the XSE Premium, you're looking at $40,265, which is not cheap. But for a plug-in hybrid with 40 miles of range, this is what does Toyota refer to as the most flexible electric vehicle you can get. Which is true, because
electrified vehicle or electric vehicle.
They called it electric.
Of course they did.
Because you can drive it electrically for most of your driving, and then just keep driving.
Sure. I I could call my Jaguar an electric vehicle. It has electrics in it. It has a battery.
But it doesn't have electric propulsion.
Technically.
I mean, if I just push it forward while the
maybe
battery...
they called it electrified. I can't remember. But
okay.
At any rate, it's a really nice car if it fits you. Nicole, did you have any other thoughts on it?
Me, the thing that I noticed, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think the big thing for me was that tunnel. I'm just not a fan of. So
it's like a video game. It's like a video game, like the when you went to the back when we used to go to arcades and you could play car games. It looks like kind of like that. Like you sat down and like it had like a weird setup because you're driving in the future at some point.
Yeah. It's definitely always test drive everything forever, always, but especially this one.
Yeah. I do like the supersonic red that they offer on this, which is not a color you would have traditionally associated with the Prius. But on this one, it works.
I still think that one of my favorite things is just like putting up pictures and talking to people about this. People are like, oh my God, it looks good. Like it's a Prius.
Oh, yeah.
It looks good. Like that's a sexy looking little sedan. Like whoever thought the word sexy and Prius would ever be in the exact same sentence? No one.
It looks like every. Oh, I'm sorry.
Different strokes for different folks.
I guess
people have different tastes in their private life. Some people might have considered the Prius sexy. If this was the
private life, there would have been a very small percentage of the population, I believe, that would have called the old Prius sexy. I'm sure they're out there, Sam.
It looks like the future car in every 90s movie about the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So while we were out in Southern California, there was also another car that they had for us to drive. The Corolla Cross Hybrid. Nicole, you want to start on the Corolla Cross Hybrid?
Do I get to start on the Corolla Cross Hybrid? So, there's the Corolla Cross. I feel like people still freak out because it's not a Corolla. This is not a little sporty, cute little Corolla. No, it's a Corolla Cross. So it's the crossover, and they couldn't have given it a more basic name by calling it Corolla Cross.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when Oldsmobile still existed and they just added Cutlass to everything.
Right. Like
Cutlass Supreme, the Cutlass.
Exactly. So we'll keep the Corolla, but we'll make it different. So I like the Corolla Cross Hybrid. I think, it's comfortable. It's got enough. It's not a large crossover. It's kind of small-ish, but I still felt like even in the rear seats, it doesn't cut so low that if you're taller, you can't sit in it. There's not a huge amount of knee room back there. So if you're going to be having people that are taller riding back there, if you have Robbies in your life, it's going to be a little bit tight for them. Everybody but Robbie is
the worst. You
Robbies are a problem. You're always a problem. But I feel like they made nice improvements to it. I like the style of it. It looks a little bit, it just overall they just took everything that was and they just they hybrided it and made it they just made everything a little bit better. I don't know that it's that much I mean, were you super impressed with this, Sam? Was this a huge leap forward for you, or?
No, I mean, it was fine. It's a pretty basic, smaller cross, it's not as small as, something like the Hyundai Venue.
Right.
It's smaller than a RAV4.
Yeah.
But it's not ridiculously small. And I think it's a reasonable size for most people, especially, if you don't have a lot of tall people in your life.
Yes.
And it's really fuel efficient. It gets like 40 miles per gallon or something like that. It's a it's got essentially got the same powertrain that was in the old Prius and that you'll find in the Corolla hybrid today,
Right.
which is, it's a very good powertrain in terms of efficiency. It's not an exciting powertrain by any stretch. It has the traditional, Toyota eCVT feel where, when you're accelerating away from a stop, it revs up to 4,000 RPM and stays there until you get to about 40 miles an hour. So it's not necessarily the most pleasant powertrain experience, but it's efficient.
Yes.
And it's quite affordable. Yeah.
I like they've given a little bit more. I don't want anyone to think that I'm calling this a sporty car because it's not really, but it kind of is compared to the other Corolla Cross. Like they gave it a little bit of sports stuff. They say there's a sport tune suspension that's standard, like and they didn't have like the trim lineup. They've dropped the sort of base trims that you can get in the Corolla Cross. I think it's the LE and the XLE. We just have S, SE, and XSE for these. So it's got a little bit of but when you say sport tune suspension, like don't expect it to feel like woohoo sports car. It's not that, but you can feel a little bit of a difference between the two. And so it's a little bit slightly more engaging drive, but it's not this dramatic difference. So like they're sort of billing this a little bit as the sportier of the two Corolla Crosses. Yes, but mildly so, I think is the caveat. I don't want to think like, yeah, get the sporty one. Sure you are. But it does have a little bit, they did tune it slightly differently. So it does drive a little bit differently, a little bit better. And if you want something to be a little more fun, you will get it with a hybrid, in addition to the fact that you're getting better fuel economy. So that's kind of a win-win.
And you can get that cool yellow paint, the yellowish gold paint.
Did you like the yellowish gold paint?
I do. Yeah.
I was sort of uncertain on the yellowish gold paint. I kept looking at it. I'm like,
it's bold.
Bold. I would agree.
And we
with
need
that.
more bold colors on the road.
We need more. So I guess if you're going for bold, slightly sporty, fuel efficient, this nails it.
Yeah. So pricing on the Corolla Cross hybrid starts at $27,970 for the S, $29,290 for the SE, and $31,065 for the XSE.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because it's not like the cheapest car on the block, but that's still a very reasonable price. And when you look at it content wise, like when you think about it, you got that, reliability that you have with Toyota, you get the fuel economy, you get something that looks a little sportier, a little jazzier, and drives a little sportier. It's actually a pretty good deal. I feel like it's a value for what it is.
And, if fuel economy is a concern for you, and for a lot of people it is, and should be, this thing is really efficient.
Yeah.
It'll get about 40 miles per gallon, which is nothing to sneeze at. This thing does great. So it's a relatively affordable vehicle that is not going to bankrupt you at the gas pump.
Right.
Yeah.
Which you always think that's the thing. Right now gas prices aren't outrageous, and it's always the way. As soon as you think, well, gas prices aren't crazy right now,
they're fine.
Like I can buy this car that's not super fuel efficient, and then it's like dum. Something happens, and suddenly gas prices are right back up to that whatever the high number was for your area, whether it's 4 or 5.
Vladimir
or
Putin does
10.
Something silly, and
right, Putin's going to do a thing, and he's going to mess with us all, and gas prices
going to do a thing,
and you're going to wish that you had purchased that fuel efficient hybrid.
You're like,
dang it! I thought I was in the clear. Stinking Putin. Yeah.
Stinking Putin.
All right. Well, this past week was also the New York Auto Show.
Yes.
And Nicole and I were both there. We talked to a bunch of people, and I've been trickling out the interviews to the patrons first. So as we record this, I've already put out the interview that you did with Angela Cepeda, the head of marketing at Hyundai. I put out the interview I did with Olabisi Boyle, who's the vice president of product planning at Hyundai. Got Ralph Gilles, the chief design officer for Stellantis. That was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
And Christian Meunier and Jim Morrison from Jeep. And there will be more coming out over the next week. And eventually I'll add these into the main show as well. But if you want to hear them now, you can join us as a patron and support the show and hear those early. Hyundai, their highlight of the show, aside from winning 3 World Car Awards for the Ioniq 6.
Three. They did really well.
Second year in a row. Last year, the Ioniq 5 won 3. They won World Car, World Electric Car, and World Design of the Year. And they got the same 3 awards for the Ioniq 6 this year.
Well, and they also got the, not technically Hyundai, but Hyundai Group, the Kia EV6 GT won performance, which is just, that one freaks me out in the best way possible. Cause like, it's this really Kia, it's this like chill mainstream brand, and we're going to build this EV. And it's like, and you're the performance vehicle of the year. That's something.
Yeah. When I drove that car, my first thought was, it's like a baby Taycan.
Yeah.
It's like a little baby Taycan. It's like a little baby Taycan. I really like that car, that EV6 GT. I think that I did a whole thing where I drove it for, I don't know, 400 miles or something for Ars Technica, talking about how it has less range. So how much more do you have to charge it? And it turns out like the timing wasn't that bad.
Yeah. There you go.
The Ioniq 6 we'd already seen before at auto shows, and we've talked about it before. And we talked, I think last week we talked, both of you had driven it and we got those impressions, but the vehicle that they were showing for the first time, at least in North America, was the new Kona, the 2024 Kona, including the EV, and they revealed some more details on that one for North America. That's coming, I don't know, later this year. Did Angela? I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole thing with Angela. Did she say what time, when that's going to launch? I think is this summer?
I don't recall her saying exactly when did I talk about the Kona
electric
launching?
version will be available later this fall. The gas version will be on sale this summer.
Okay. So this time around, Robbie, you and your wife already have the current generation Kona
I
EV.
literally associate him with the Kona. Like, you're never
I'm
allowed
just
to
Kona
sell
guy.
that, Robbie. You're Kona guy.
Well, we're leasing it, so and the ID Buzz is coming up, so we're just like, ooh. I figure by the time we get the ID Buzz, our lease will be up.
You're gonna have to be ID Buzz guy. I don't know if I'm ready for that.
We could put the dogs in it. I could put van stuff in it.
That's
Like it's
perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect. We'll have that and the BRZ. That's
there you go.
And the damn Jaguar.
Because you'd have to pay somebody to take that one away, right?
No. I got an update from Carvana that it's now worth $900 and something.
Oh,
really?
It has currently a coolant leak, and I just replaced the hoses and the clamps, and I turned it on and I looked, and between two hoses is like a metal a metal tube, and I look and it's like a little fountain just shooting up. So now I gotta take everything.
Leak in the pipe.
And I'm thinking maybe I should just go get some JB Weld. Like it's. I feel like replacing that.
You want to wait until just before you're ready to sell it to do that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want it to go too long between applying that and then somebody inspecting it.
You want it to hold.
It's gonna be hot and it's getting cold and it gets hot. It's just I don't know. I got to figure out. Anyway, the goddamn Jaguar, bane of my existence.
Anyway,
it was free. I shouldn't complain about it.
Well, there's a new Kona coming, and this time around, they're going to have 2 different battery sizes available. Unlike the current generation Kona, you get basically the same 64.8 kilowatt hour battery, which will have essentially the same 260 miles of range. But there's also a smaller, I think it's like 48 or 49 kilowatt hour battery with 197 miles of range. No information on pricing yet, unfortunately. And this isn't the full eGMP platform. So this is more like with the Niro EV, the new Niro EV, where it's taking some pieces from eGMP and some carryover stuff from the current generation EVs. So it's a 400-volt system. It goes charges from 10 to 80% in 43 minutes. It also has the vehicle to load capability from eGMP, so you can plug in a little adapter into that charge port on the front and get power out. They haven't given us pricing yet. Aside from the design changing, the biggest change, really, the most fundamental change to this thing is 5.7 inches longer, which really addresses the only real complaint I had about the current Kona, which is tiny. The back seat is very tiny. The front seat's fine, back seat. But the back seat is tiny.
Perfect for dogs, though.
Yeah. I sat in the back seat of the new Kona. I was perfectly content. Had enough headroom, had enough knee room. So I would be good with the Kona EV. And I also, again, like the yellow color on this one. It's a different yellow than what's on the Corolla Cross. This one has a little more hint of a green to it.
Pikachu.
But
is it still bold, Sam?
It's definitely very bold.
It's bold. Okay,
I don't know that I'd call this Pikachu yellow, because it's
a little green.
Pikachu's more pure
like
yellow.
Bright. It's really bright.
Yeah. This has got a hint of green in it.
Okay.
And green. But I like it. I like it a lot. And I actually like it better as the EV compared to the gas version, because the EV, the wheel arches, these big bold wheel arches are all body color, whereas on the gas version they're like a matte dark gray, black, more crossover-ish. And I don't know, not as crazy about it on there. It all looks kind of tacked on.
Do you like it all the same color?
I like it it all body color. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would definitely go with the EV look. And what do you think?
I like it. I think I enjoy the fact that they still have the charge port up front, so you can just pull straight in and just charge instead of doing that 50-point turn that people have to do sometimes in order to charge their vehicles, because they have to back it in.
Actually,
you could probably reach the cable on a supercharger too.
Yeah, you could go to supercharger. You could.
That's like one of my biggest gripes is when you're trying to back in. It's like, okay, to get in, because that guy pulled on this side and I got to pull on this side, and the angle, and there's a post and there's a tree and there's a dumpster, and you're like, can I just pull straight in?
Can I just pull straight in?
That's just all like I want.
Just like, because they're all at parking spaces. They're not, it's not a gas station.
Yeah, it's never, spot. Just put it in the front. That would make life easier for the entire planet.
There are a few pull-throughs that are nice.
Not very many, though, right?
There's like one out in Barstow.
There's the Electrify America station.
There's one in the U.S.
In Kalamazoo, Michigan. You can also pull through on that one.
Oh, okay, cool.
They're angled and you can pull through.
None of ours are pull through here. The ones that I've tried in New Hampshire, they're all pull up to, and so you have to back in. Although none of them I haven't seen that have little posts, like the weird angled ones are the worst, where you have to like angle in. No, don't do that.
Yeah, how do you back those? Like the EA stations at like the Walmarts.
Yes.
A lot of them, it's angled parking, and I'm like, well, now you have a car that has, if you have an Ioniq 5. You gotta back into that, and some of them are, what they do is they've moved. They used to be the charging stations were at the head of the parking space, so now they're in between the parking spaces.
Well, that's the problem, is they're all different. Depends on where you go.
Yeah, you don't know where you're going.
Having it at the side isn't always great, because depending on
it might be the wrong
tight
side.
Your spot. Yeah, it's like you're trying to like come around, like I gotta pull in here, but I gotta back in here. Now my door opens directly into the charging terminal, and it's like you're doing that, like, oh God, like it's like, well, I've cleaned the car with my clothing, trying to sneak out of it, and it's not ideal. Just make it.
As long as we're on this topic, let's address the email that you got from Electrify America. Did we talk last week about?
We did.
People with mobility issues.
Yes. So last week, and I'm looking back at our last week's show notes. Paul Kavanaugh had asked if we'd had any discussion about how disabled drivers will recharge their electric vehicles. So I decided to reach out to Electrify America, because I had a contact there. And how do I say his name wrong every time? Sam?
Octavio Navarro,
because he had answered some questions for me before, and he said, yeah, we do. And he said, hold a second, I'll get you something. I'll get you an official statement. So I was expecting an official statement. What I got is, I will read it exactly as sent to me. Electrify America charging stations are designed and permitted to meet jurisdictional accessibility requirements for EV charging customers.
Which apparently means that in most regions, there are no requirements for accessibility for charging, because most of them are garbage. You cannot access them if you're in a wheelchair, for example.
So I felt like that was like, I appreciated that he responded, and he responded really quickly, but that's almost like a non-response. It's like, well, we're not breaking the law. Well, great.
Yeah. I mean,
but are you making it easier for people?
Yeah. I mean, my local EA station here has 6 chargers, and it's laid out with, there's a parking spot, and then there's 2 chargers side by side between 2 parking spots, and then 2 more slots, and then 2 more chargers, 2 more slots, and then another slot on the other side. So 6 vehicles, 6 chargers. And there is no way that somebody in a, that had if they had a wheelchair accessible vehicle, if they were in a wheelchair, that they would be able to get the cables and get them plugged into their vehicle. There's simply no room to maneuver around
some of those spots, like I was just saying, some of those spots are barely that I, as a fully mobile adult, can get in and out of the car because there's so little clearance because they're narrow. How on earth is someone in a wheelchair supposed to get out there? They can't. They literally can't.
Yeah.
So I never thought of it until Paul asked that question, and I thought, gosh, that's a pretty big issue.
Yeah. And, I know, like, for example, a lot of people, that have wheelchair accessible vehicles, they're often based on minivans. Right. A lot of them are based on Chrysler Pacificas and Toyota Siennas. And in many cases, the ramp is either going to be on the side or at the back in the tailgate.
No way.
And in either case, there is no way that you are getting out of the vehicle in any of these charging stations.
Like some of them, when you back into them, when you have to back in, like directly, once you're backed in enough that you can remotely reach the cable to where you need to reach it on the back of the vehicle, there is like nothing behind you. There's a wall, there's a tree, there's like something of a drop off as it goes to another level apart. Like literally no way to get out of the vehicle. None, zero, zip.
Yeah. And I did actually ask BC Boyle from Hyundai about this.
You did? What did she say?
Because she part of her responsibility is product planning and mobility strategy. And because one of the things that Hyundai recently showed in Korea, Hyundai's done a lot of stuff in robotics recently. They bought Boston Robotics, and they've done a variety of different things. They actually showed a robotic charger. It basically looks like like a traditional industrial robot. It's basically an articulated arm with a charger on the end there, and then you've got sensors to detect where the charging port is and maneuver in. And she said, I mean, that's one of the reasons why they're looking at that sort of technology, is to enable accessibility. And so it's good to see that at least Hyundai is thinking about this. And I know for example, at Cruise, when I visited Cruise last fall, they showed some work that they're doing for the Cruise Origin. Now, they were doing something similar to that for the robotaxi, so that they could automate the charging process, so they wouldn't have to rely on people to plug the vehicles in when they come in to charge. But that same technology could be used by GM to do the same thing. But the problem is, none of this is being, at least to my knowledge, none of this is being done by the companies that actually operate the charging networks. It's being done by automakers.
Like, I feel like it should be something that it's almost like it's terrible that I didn't think of it until the question was posed to us, but absolutely bizarre that none of the companies thought, should we at least have one truly handicap accessible charging station at each of our, you think of, like, you walk into a women's room, there's always one stall for handicapped people. Like, it doesn't matter if there's
got more room, a larger door.
Right, there's always one, and you might have to wait for it. It's not like every stall is handicap accessible, but there is one. I think that there isn't a similar kind of thing at most charging stations, when really it's just space issue. It's surprising to me. I was surprised, genuinely surprised.
Yeah, I think the charging companies need to do better. And not just for those, in wheelchairs, but for everybody. I mean, if you're older, for example, I mean,
Right?
with those DC charging cables, when it's cold, those things get very stiff, and it's hard to maneuver those things and get them plugged in. And
I agree.
if you have arthritis, and you may have some limited strength in your arms or your wrists or hands, you're also going to have a very hard time with those.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, the fact that, like, okay, there are definitely issues in terms of accessibility, not just for the average adult, but just for the very many of us who are not average adults. There's so many people with various issues that make it difficult for them to use a gas pump. Those same issues exist when it comes time to get a charger in, or perhaps in some situations even more challenging. And there's nothing that I've seen that really addresses this.
The other thing you mentioned, gas pumps. So you go to a gas station, there's always, even if it's, if you're outside of New Jersey or Oregon, where you're still not allowed to pump your own gas, there's somebody working there. There's an attendant there, working in the convenience store.
The little thing that says push a button if you need help.
Yeah.
Right. And
they can come out and assist you. So if you're in a chair, instead of getting out of the vehicle, you can get some assistance. Almost none of these charging stations are in that sort of scenario. So we need more of that. You
literally have to rely on the kindness of a stranger to a point. Like, if you saw someone who was struggling at or was in a situation like, hey, do you want me to plug in your car for you? But what if you're there and there's no one there? Like, I think we're all good people and we would help other people when we see they need help. But what if you're not? What if there's not anybody there to help you? Like, literally, you would have to have just some other person who happened to be charging their vehicle at the same time and noticed, hey, that guy needs some help. He's never going to be able to plug that in that way. Let me see if I can give him a hand.
All right. Let's jump to the other side of the Hyundai Motor Group fence with Kia. They showed the EV9 publicly, at least in North America, for the first time. I don't know if they've showed it in Korea publicly. I don't think
so.
We got to see it. We got to sit in it. And it's pretty cool. We've had questions in the past about, electric 3-row utilities. And right now, it's pretty limited. You've got the Rivian R1S, the Mercedes EQS, the Tesla Model X, although the third row's, very limited headroom. And that's basically it. I think I can't think of anything else right now except those three. And they're all, $100,000 plus vehicles.
Right.
And the EV9, is a Telluride sized vehicle that is probably going to start somewhere around $50,000.
That's what the guess is. Yeah.
Yeah. And, probably go up into mid to upper 60s maxed out. You saw the EV9 in Korea.
I did.
You've had time to spend a little more time with it in New York. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I got a really a good deep dive of it when I was in Korea, and then to see it in New York, they had a better color in New York. They had very plain colors, and they had this sort of blue color, the one that they had on display in New York, that looked really good. I liked this from the beginning. I mean, it's such a neat proposition in terms of giving families who aren't necessarily looking for a luxury option, who are on a budget, who need a 3-row vehicle, they can get it with this. Like, yeah, there's cheaper options out there, but like starting at around 50, that's not crazy for a 3-row SUV. That is affordable. That is like, if your family is looking at that, it's not like you're going to get one for 20 grand. You know what I mean? So it's in the realm of affordability for people. I think this, the technology that it has with those, I love how the infotainment screen, like it's the infotainment and then a small screen that is HVAC, and then your digital instrument cluster, and it's like one big screen, but it's technically 3. It looks like 1 as you glance at it across the dashboard. I think that looks good. The versatility of it with how that second row seats move around.
Not in North America, though.
Yeah, I know. That's not North America.
We don't get the swivel seats.
We don't get the swivel seats.
We don't get it, but I loved that. So like maybe someday, who knows, whatever safety, whatever reason, but it's just safety. Pasha. But
it's overrated.
It's overrated, but just the openness of it, the comfort of it, the features. And I think I'm excited about it because I think it's going to open up EVs to people who are like, we can't ever get one of those. We have 3 kids. We can't afford to buy a luxury car. We can't do it. It's not going to happen. So they've completely crossed that off their list. Now, hey, guess what? You can put that on your list. I like the style. I like the features. I like the technology. I like where they're going with this in terms of a brand is what it could mean for future product. I think it's great. So I'm excited about this. I'm hoping they can make these cool cars can wait. Like, wow, it's like, yeah, we're going to have 5 next week. And then you're going to have to wait for months. Like, I'm hoping they're able to produce it. Like, come on, once you get out there, like start making it. Cause I think it's going to sell like crazy. I genuinely think people are going to buy this. It's going to I think Kia is just printing money, and good for them that they came up with a vehicle that does it that well. Like if you make a vehicle that everybody wants at a price that people think is fair and everyone wants to buy it and you're making bank, then you did something good for everybody. So have at it. So I'm excited about it.
And then they keep winning awards, which I mean, this time next year.
Well, they did announce in New York that the EV9 it launches production in South Korea this summer, and it'll be available in North America in the fourth quarter. But next year in 2024, they're going to add production at their plant in West Point, Georgia. So they should have significantly more capacity when that goes online.
Yeah. So hopefully with all of that, they'll be able to keep up with demand, because I feel like people are ready to have EVs and this not be something for an exclusive set. There's still something of that perception.
It's not a crossover. It's not a luxury vehicle. I mean, it's either luxury vehicles or luxury crossovers.
Right. It's like let's get something like, you want it to be mass market. You want people to buy in. You want people to accept it. Then build things that the mass market can actually get behind. This is one of those vehicles.
Yeah. And to Telluride, it's electric. Kia makes good electric powertrains. Kia makes good Telluride. And they have to really mess up to make this a bad car.
Right? It has to go really sideways in a way that none of us can see for this to be a fail.
Whoopsie. What happened? Well, yeah.
And I talked to Mike Wild, the head of product planning for Kia. And one of the things that he mentioned is that, overseas, they've announced that the EV9 is going to be available with a level 3 automation system, which means you can go hands off and eyes off. You don't have to supervise. We're not going to have that in North America, at least to start with, but it will have a hands-free, eyes-on system similar to Super Cruise, Blue Cruise, ProPilot 2. So it's got driver monitoring system, and it has LiDAR. It's got 2 LiDAR sensors in the front to help with the perception. So it'll be certainly the most affordable vehicle yet with LiDAR in North America.
You look at the specs, and it's just like, oh, this is 800-volt charging. You
would think this is a $100,000 plus vehicle.
It's got a heat pump. I mean, all the things that you're sort of like, oh, these are the things I want in an EV. You're like, oh, it has all those things.
It has all the things you want. I mean, they've done a good job on packaging on this. I mean, they put a lot into this. They really want it to be a big deal, and I think it is going to be. I genuinely think this is like a big deal vehicle, because you have no other. The first ones really do it and look like they've done it right and affordably, and I'm excited for them.
Well, speaking of powering your home, let's jump to Stellantis for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
We saw the 2024 Jeep Wrangler, which looks pretty much the same as the 2023 Wrangler, but does have some important updates to it. And also, we saw the Ram 1500 Rev, the EV, for the first time in public. So Wrangler, mid-cycle refresh, all new interior, 12-inch screen, and they now have power output from the charge port with the power box. And the power box is basically like a fancy power strip that plugs into your charge port on the Wrangler 4xe and gives you 4 outlets with up to 3.6 kilowatts of power. And you can also order the Wrangler from 2024 with a front bumper that includes an integrated 8,000-pound Warn winch. First time it's been available as a factory fit. So it's been crash tested and everything. It's got a bumper that's specifically designed for this. Any thoughts on the updated Wrangler?
I mean, I think it's just like it takes what was already a pretty darn good off-road vehicle and gives a few more little like bells and whistles. I think it's good. I think the bigger screen is good. I think the winch is cool. And having that power box, that's a big deal, because these people are out and about wherever they are on the trail. That's kind of a cool feature if you needed power for something.
Yeah. The other thing from my conversation with Christian and Jim is the the take rate for the 4xe, the plug-in hybrid, is now up to 38%. And for 2024, they're adding 4xe to the sport trim, the more affordable trim. And they are projecting that they're going to get to over 50% penetration for the plug-in hybrid on the Wrangler next year.
Somehow this just doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's been a really well received vehicle from the minute it came out. I don't know what the numbers are now. At one point in time, it was the best selling plug-in hybrid.
It still is. And
is
the Grand Cherokee
holding that?
The Grand Cherokee 4xe is number 2.
That's pretty incredible. Like if you were looking at that going, we're the best selling. Well, let's put this on more stuff. How quickly can we make this other things? Put it on more things, So yeah, I think easily it's going to continue to be popular, and with good reason. I have one. I'm biased. I should, caveat. I own one and I love it. So there you go.
I just like all the knobs and the buttons and the everything. Yeah.
All the little switches and things.
All the little switches and things. You're like, turn this,
twist that, push that in, do that. Oh, the doors come off. Yeah. Yeah. There's all sorts of cool stuff.
Shift this.
And then we finally got some specs on the Ram 1500 Rev. With the base version, it's projected to have 350 miles of range. The big battery version, 229 kilowatt hours, 500 miles of range.
That's a lot.
Yeah, which means that even when you hook up a 14,000-pound trailer, you might still get 200 miles.
Exactly. That's the thing, though. Like if it has that much, when it's like, okay, if you're not towing anything, but that's the big problem. You tow and suddenly your 250, 300-mile truck gets like 5, If you start that high, when you put stuff on the back, you'll actually get usable range.
Yep.
Is this an 800? This has to be an 800 volts.
It does charge at 350 kilowatts. Yes.
Okay.
But it's actually it's more like the system that GM has on the big trucks,
the Hummer.
Where it's a 400/800 volt.
Yeah.
So it charges at 800 volts by splitting the voltage between the 2 layers of the battery.
Okay.
But
that's
I mean,
fine.
they said
as long as
it'll
charges 229 kilowatts.
Yeah, it'll add. They say it'll add 115 miles of range in 10 minutes. That's of course that's when you're at fairly low state of charge. But
yeah,
I mean, for a truck, it'll do.
Just your regular 80% you charge during your regular day, you still have 400 miles of range in a giant truck.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool stuff.
Yep. All right, last couple items here. Just a reminder not to walk naked in front of your Tesla.
Oh my gosh, this is hilarious. I want to be like, people, don't be stupid.
Well, I mean, the problem is, there was a report that came out a few days ago from Reuters. And this is not the first time this has happened. Tesla, as we know, they like to talk about it all the time, how they upload data from their cars that they use to make autopilot and FSD better. So they upload short video clips. And it turns out that some Tesla employees have been sharing video clips that may contain information that's not necessarily relevant for training AI models, but that they find personally amusing, and creating memes from this and sharing it around their coworkers, and including clips of some gentleman who happened to go out in his garage without any clothes on, but had the Sentry mode turned on his Tesla for theft protection, and it captured that and uploaded that automatically without his knowledge. And there was also apparently clips of couples in intimate situations.
Oh, good that's just
So keep in mind that that your Tesla has a lot of cameras on it, and unlike most cars, those cameras may be running when the car is turned off.
Yes.
And recording stuff and uploading it to Tesla. And there are employees at Tesla who have, let's say, less than ideal judgment. They are taking inspiration from their CEO. And so you definitely want to be careful.
It's reprehensible.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
The idea that, all this data, we talk to automakers about this data and we say, okay, how are you anonymizing this data? How are you making sure that this data isn't connected to this person? And they're like, oh, we do this and this and this and this. They have all these answers, and then we find out Tesla's like, we're not really doing it. And we're also sharing it.
It's such
Well,
a weird
that's
thing.
the latter
to
part
think.
is the bigger thing, because even if they were properly anonymizing it, they're
still
the
sharing
fact
it.
that they're sharing it amongst themselves is
That's the
all
thing. Like, don't you wonder? It's like, okay, so you think at some point you've got that data coming in, and it's not going out to, all the way down to the guy in the assembly line. Like, there should be a select group of people that are getting all that data or have access to that at any given moment. But like, really, whoever you've given access to in that group, there's enough of them that are like, woohoo, let's share this. Making pictures of Susie bringing her stuff to the trash in the garage. Like, it just seems like such like, where's the line? Where's the security?
It's a top-down problem,
right? Like, that just should not. It doesn't seem like that should be.
There's like one guy. And it's probably a guy. If there's one guy who's doing it, and everyone's like, "Hey, dude, you can't be doing this," and everyone's getting mad. But apparently, it's a system.
That was it. It wasn't like it was like, Bob, stop! Don't share any more pictures. Sorry,
Bob, you need to stop this.
Right? It wasn't just Bob. It was many, many, many Bobs.
It's just the culture of like, ha ha, look at this. They're like, dude.
Mm-hmm. Everybody at Tesla needs to go through the 2-hour preventing harassment video training thing that I did on Friday afternoon.
There you go.
Yeah. Because if you work at Tesla, just stop. Don't do this shit. I know your CEO, finds this kind of stuff amusing, but don't do it.
It's just because you're just shooting your. You're gonna lose your job.
Just stop.
All right. So Robbie, tell us about something funny you saw before Nicole has to dash off to take her daughter to the airport.
So so last night I went to go see Sunny Day Real Estate, wonderful band, one of my favorite bands in San Francisco. And as I walk out of the Regency Ballroom on Van Ness, there is a Waymo and a Cruise vehicle, both like driving side by side down the road. Okay, fine. Well, at one point, the Cruise, it's in the left-hand lane, Waymo's in the right-hand lane, decides it wants to get into the right-hand lane, but it can't because the Waymo's there. And then the Waymo decides it wants to get in the left-hand lane. So they both have their blinker on, and they both are sort of edging toward each other to like almost on the verge of smash, and then they're stopping, and they're starting, and they're stopping, and they're starting. And I'm just watching this, and I'm like, this is our new, these are our robot overlords who can't figure out which, they both want to be in the other lane, but both of them are confused by the fact that the vehicle next to them isn't acting how they would expect another car to act. So they're just like almost hitting each other. And it was just like, oh, yeah. And on the back of the Cruise now, they now have a little sticker that says may stop quickly or may stop suddenly, because that was an issue when I lived in the cities. You'd be driving or riding or whatever, and behind a Cruise, all of a sudden there's just stop, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, what the hell is going on?
It's like the learner's permit. Like, you see the student driver stickers on like the magnets you can put on your car. It's like the student driver, please be ready.
Well, a friend of mine has one of those on the back of his Tesla with FSD beta.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Student driver sticker on there.
So the Cruise and the Waymo systems,
they're student drivers.
They're both, trying to get, they both want paid ride-hailing service, driverless ride-hailing services in San Francisco. They both want to open that up, and I'm just watching that happen, and I'm
going, nope, not yet, guys.
Thought it would resolve it, so I would have taken a video because I thought it would resolve itself relatively quickly within like a few seconds. It's like a good 5-10 seconds of them like sort of blocking
who goes,
traffic, not being sure like which lane to be in, and I'm just like, oh, robots.
It's like they're too polite to each other. Like it's like they're Midwesterners. Like, you go, no, you go, no, after you, no, after you.
It was yeah.
They need to have some sort of.
I really expected them to smash into one another at some point because they got pretty close to each other.
Well, I wrote an article, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago when the first time a Waymo vehicle crashed into a bus. But how this was another example of why you needed vehicle-to-vehicle communications, especially for automation, so the vehicles know what the other is trying to do. Mm-hmm. And then you need to have some sort of standardized method of negotiation between vehicles, so that, if they both want to switch lanes, it's like, okay, I'll slow down, you can get ahead and you can get in this lane and I'll get in your lane. It's
that was part of the
if
dream.
It was humans, for humans, we do that sort of thing all the time. We use nonverbal communications. We'll wave our hand and signal to somebody, say, okay, go ahead,
Even
I'll
eye
back.
contact is like
Yeah.
huge
Right.
thing.
You
Especially
just
when you're
look and you
crossing
do
the
that like,
street,
oh,
like,
you're,
huh? Huh?
you
Yeah.
can have none of that. Yeah.
A little wave, a little
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, the robots apparently, the robots don't have that. They just both keep trying to get into the other's lane
Yeah.
while next to each other. It was just just watching it, and after the show, I was like, well, yeah.
All right. Let's see. Nicole, do you need to run to take?
I do. I'm
Okay.
gonna disappear,
You got a
gentlemen. 'Cause I'm
motor?
gonna take my
All right.
child to the airport. So, guys, I am out, and I will be
We'll
with
talk
you
to you
next
next
week.
time.
Bye.
Bye.
right. Robbie, let's you and I answer a couple of questions. Let's see.
Whoa.
Rich asked, in the near future, I'll be purchasing a new Toyota RAV4. However, I just came across several articles about car hacks and hackers taking control of cars. Can you recommend any articles, or have you written about this subject?
Well,
I mean,
I used to write about hacking. That
Yeah.
was like my thing before I was a car journalist. I wrote about hacking all the time. And nothing is hacker proof. So let's just
Mhm.
lay down the baseline. Everything in the world can be hacked. You can be hacked. That's how most things get hacked is through humans. What happens is, recently what's really nice is that people really got on Hyundai Motors case about their vehicles being able to be stolen relatively simply. And first they were giving out the club, which was kind of hilarious, but what? and then they decided that they're pushing out a fix. So yeah, so every vehicle essentially can be hacked. You can and it doesn't even have to be something like what the Hyundai Motor Company was dealing, or Hyundai Motor Group was dealing with.
And I mean, that wasn't even a communications based hack. I mean, that was just physical. They had decided to cheap out on something, and somebody that was there. If you've got physical access to something, you can do bad things to it.
So there's that. Especially the physical access thing is a big deal, because I remember there was a big infosec person, a big security researcher, who the year before had done this really big, had exposed this really big hack. And the next year at DEF CON, I used to go to this big hacker conference every summer in Las Vegas. They had another thing, but it required physical. They had to actually get into the car in order to do it. So DEF CON said no. We're like, this is, if you can get into the car, you can get into the car. If you're in the car, then you just take the car. So, Rich, I really wouldn't be that concerned. I mean, I have a Hyundai. I wasn't really worried about anyone stealing my Hyundai. Even if I had an old Hyundai, I would be like, well, I have insurance. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
And so, there's some really, like Brian Krebs, Kim Zetter, Violet Blue. I mean, there's a lot of really, really great infosec reporters out there who you can sort of see what they're working on and what they're doing. And then every year DEF CON, it's big. I talked about a big hacker conference, and if you just follow the coverage of that because they have a big car hacking village.
Mhm.
And so, you can just kind of follow that every summer and see like what's the thing that's happening, what are people talking about, and that can give you some insight into how vehicles are being hacked. A lot of it's relay hacking, which is essentially taking your key fob, because the key fob has a little radio in it, and your car has a little like receiver, and they have to be within like a few feet of each other for your car unlocks. Well, you use this like sort of relay. Essentially, you're just sort of boosting that signal in order for the car to think that your key fob is right next to the car, even though it's inside the house. That's really how most people have been stealing cars for the last, I don't know, like 10 years at this point. But that's becoming even more difficult. I mean, I think at one time,
because they're transitioning to ultra wideband now, which is much more secure.
Yeah. So everyone's getting smarter about how they build their cars, and it really comes down to security researchers finding these holes, finding these vulnerabilities, and sharing them with the automakers, or in the case of like again the Hyundai Motor Group, just being shamed into fixing it. So is it an issue? Yes. Is it always going to be an issue? Yes. This will always be an issue. I wouldn't be too concerned about buying the new Toyota RAV4.
No.
and worrying about it.
And, I mean, I've done a bunch of stuff on cybersecurity as part of my day job, automotive cybersecurity. And, as vehicles get more and more connected, you've got more potential attack surfaces. And, you combine connectivity and some automation, and there's the potential for bad things to happen. Accessing a vehicle remotely has never been easy. When Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek did it on a Jeep back in 2015, it was not an easy thing to do. They figured out a way to do it, to access the vehicle remotely and take some control of it. Prior to that, some researchers from University of Washington had done the same thing with GM OnStar. Both of those were fixed fairly quickly. Since then, the auto industry, automakers and suppliers have gotten together. They formed something called an ISAC, Information Security and Awareness Center, or Information Sharing and Awareness and Analysis Center. And there's these ISACs exist in a lot of different industry verticals, and banking and healthcare and aerospace. And there's the auto ISAC, where they have the ability to share information about hacks and best practices and everything. Over the last decade, up until about 2014, 2015, most automakers didn't take the problem too seriously. But since then, they've
OnStar really smacked them all in the face.
Yeah. So now they do take it much more seriously. They all have internal teams that are focused on building in security from the ground up as they design these systems, which is what you have to do. You have to design it with security in mind. You can't patch it after the fact. And so as they're developing these newer generation electronic architectures and software platforms, they are taking that into account. By the way, Valasek and Miller, the guys who did the Jeep hack, they work for Cruise now. They're in charge of cybersecurity at Cruise. So, they're trying to make sure those vehicles are secure. As you said, you can never guarantee absolute security in a complex system. But, they're doing what they can to make them as secure as possible. The problem is you've got all these pieces, the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And, if you've got a back-end system, a cloud system that is easily penetrated, that may be the way that somebody gets in and gets access to a whole fleet of vehicles. So you have to secure all of these pieces of it. The only way to make sure that your car never gets hacked remotely is to drive something old that's not connected, like my Miata.
Just like Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, or your Jaguar. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
just like BSG,
the Ronald D. Moore Battlestar Galactica. The only ship that didn't get killed by the Cylons was the oldest ship in the fleet that wasn't connected. So,
yeah.
All right, next
but
up.
I wouldn't worry about Cylons.
Yeah. Leith asked, I'm itching to buy a sporty EV, so I've been slowly tracking what's out and what's coming. I've been driving Corvettes for 14 years, and before that Pontiac Solstices and a Porsche 924. So my true love is the two-seater cars. Well, technically the 924 was not a two-seater, but we'll let that slide. Unfortunately, with USA going more SUV and EVs not lending to smaller, lighter cars yet, it'll be some time until there's options. So to keep myself occupied till then, I've just been tracking what's coming, looking for any feedback on vehicles I might have missed, only looking at cars less than 100,000 and not Tesla. Don't like the looks and interior, don't find them sporty handling, and Elon. So what do you think? This came from the Discord, and
he has a nice little spreadsheet, which I am a huge fan of. So you now I want to be your best friend, because I make a lot of spreadsheets for a lot of things, for reporting, for bands, for just random fun.
So yeah, I mean in this chart he included in the Discord, he mentions vehicles like an Alpine A110 EV coming in a couple of years. Probably not going to come to the U.S. market. The MG Cyberster also probably not coming to the U.S. market. Yet the BMW i40 M50, not a two-seater. Fiat 500, a Barth.
It might as well be a two-seater. I don't know what those back. I've had a Fiat 500. I don't know why they even have a rear seat in the Fiat 500.
Yeah, same with the Mini Cooper SE. There's a new generation electric Mini Cooper coming next year. There's the Porsche 718 Boxster and Cayman, which are coming as electric. Prius Prime doesn't really fit what you're looking for. Lotus Type 135 crossover. The VW ID. Yeah, so I mean, basically everything on this list here is not, except for like the Corvette C9.
I'm gonna, you know what I'm gonna say for just fun value. Just keep an eye on Mini.
Yeah,
because the Cooper SE is just such a fun electric vehicle. You have those seats in the back, so you can, you can sit in them if you want. Finding it's just hard to get a two-seater anyway in the United States at this point. Good luck with that. Just in general, I think before, it's going to be a while before we see two-seater EVs, just because all the work that goes into building an EV, they're still more expensive than a gas vehicle, and if you're going to have to, so it means you have to sell more, and two-seaters just don't sell very well. That's just, sadly, that's true. But so I would totally, if I were you, I'd just keep an eye on what Mini is doing. If you have a chance to drive a Leaf, not a Leaf, Jesus. If you have a chance, don't drive a Leaf, because that's the exact opposite of what you want. If you have a chance to buy the Mini SE, the Cooper SE, I think he'll be like, oh. And so if they can keep that sort of feel with their next generation of electric minis, and that's gonna be the fun sort of vehicle. And then maybe someday we'll get a.
Well, there's also the Polestar 02, the production. Is it gonna be the Polestar 6? Yeah. I think the convertible. They have the 02 concept, which they showed last year. That's coming as a production model in 2026. That one might fit. We'll see. I don't know if it's going to hit that $100,000 mark. Yeah, that's tough, because Polestars, they're not cheap. They are very upfront there. We do not make, we're not cheap. The indicative price of the final car is $200,000. Oh, okay, maybe not that one. But in the Discord, Andy C responded with the Ioniq 6 GT. There's also an Ioniq 6N coming. So that's a sedan. But I mean, that one's going to have, basically the same kind of performance you get in the EV6 GT, the Kia EV6 GT, and the Genesis GV60 performance. Leith said, no SUVs or crossovers. The EV6 GT, although it is technically classed as a crossover, it's the EV6 wagon. It's a sport wagon. It's not a crossover. I would definitely take a serious look at the EV6 GT. That one really is fun. It's a really fun, and it has drift mode. So if you find a track or an empty parking lot. Yeah, and then of course next year, we've got the Dodge Charger, the Charger EV coming in 2024. I just feel like that thing's gonna handle like a brick. We'll see. But there's Alfa Romeo EVs coming in the next couple of years. Those could be very interesting. And also, speaking of Alfa Romeo, I think somebody had asked somewhere, and I don't remember exactly where, about I think it was in the Discord, but somebody had asked about the Tonale platform, the Tonale and Hornet platform, whether, thinking that it was basically the same platform as the Compass. And I actually asked somebody from Stellantis this week, and it's not. It's actually there's some shared componentry, but it is it's bigger than the Compass. It is fundamentally different in a lot of ways from the Compass platform. You could think of it kind of as a next generation Compass, but that's one. I think what Alpha is doing there with the Tonale, is maybe a good indication of where they're going. With the next generation Giulia and Stelvio. So, and obviously you don't want the Giulia or the Stelvio, but the Giulia EV could be very interesting. So there's a lot of fun stuff coming. I'm still gonna just point to the Mini. I think for what the sort of what you're looking for is, or the EV6 GT or the i4 M50. I know the i4 M50 is heavy. I saw it, but it's the way they, I think everyone after they drove the
after the Taycan came out, every automaker drove that car and like, okay, let's go back to chassis and fix this.
Yeah. And yeah, I've got an i4 M50 coming in a couple of weeks. And I've driven it briefly last year and was really, really impressed with it. It's shockingly good.
Yeah.
HMI asked, what can you tell us about the future of GMC Chevy branded infotainment software and how Apple users will interact with it? Should I just buy a car with Apple CarPlay today, or will this unknown future be okay for Apple users too? I can just buy whatever 2024 I want later. A lot depends on your use of Google services. If you use Google Maps, and Google Contacts and stuff like that, and depending on what apps, what media apps you use, if there are Android versions of it, you'll be fine with the Android Auto version. Because
it's only EVs. So if you're talking about
it's only on the EVs,
if you're talking about getting a gas car, you're just you'll have Apple CarPlay for who knows how long, and forever,
at least a couple of years. Yeah. But I think if they can get through this EV launch and things don't blow up too much in their faces, then they may decide, okay, we can do this for the gas cars too. But
I chatted with GM about this the other day after I wrote an article, and my takeaway and my discussion with them they want to make a really, really great infotainment system. But my feeling is like, you should have made the big great infotainment system and then made it so, and then people are like, oh, okay, I'm not using CarPlay anymore because of this.
Yeah.
Like, MBUX, I've rarely used CarPlay in MBUX. I use it for voice voice texting, and that's really about it. I'm still using CarPlay in other automakers' cars. So you gotta best MBUX, and then you can say, okay, we're gonna take this away after. But you have to I really think they just jumped the gun on this. I think they could have. Yeah,
they should have done it in a different sequence.
Yeah.
And when I was in New York, I asked a bunch of different automakers about this, and all of them said, basically, we have no current plans to remove smartphone projection. Our goal is, what you just said, is to make our system good enough that people will want to use it.
Yeah.
Instead of the projection. But none of them
wanted to do. Like 5 years ago, Mercedes we want to be better than CarPlay, and we want, and so they've been working on it, and they've been working on it. And so, but they're still offering CarPlay because they know people are still using it, but they don't, none of them want CarPlay, and they don't want phone mirroring in their car. They want to own the whole shebang, but they have to live in the world that they've, essentially they created.
Right. Because, part of it, there were two factors. One was they had mediocre software, but it was also running on mediocre hardware. They were running on low-powered microcontrollers that didn't have the performance necessary for what they were trying to do with the software. So the whole thing was just garbage. Notably, my Ford Touch, aka Sync version 2.
Oh man,
was atrocious because they had software that was running on way underpowered hardware. It crashed all the time. It was slow. That was one of the most notorious ones. And when they replaced it with Sync 3, it got a lot better because they put much more powerful compute hardware in there. It's still not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. And now, what we're seeing is, transition to even more powerful chips in there. You've got, depending on who you're looking at, in most cases, it's either NVIDIA, in some cases, like the Parker and Pascal chips, or even, in some cases, the Xavier chips running the infotainment system. Or Qualcomm Snapdragon chips have way more performance than anything they've used in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And so these systems are getting way better. And they've, these automakers have also hired, most of them have also hired a lot of designers and people with experience writing software for mobile platforms, for phones and for tablets.
Lucid hired the Apple guy.
Yeah, Mike Bell, came from Apple.
Nice guy.
And so
real smart.
Yeah, so it's getting a lot better. And I think probably in the next 5 years we probably will see Android Auto and CarPlay go away from more vehicles rather than the other way around. I think that this was a bridge technology. It's not the end state.
And that's the thing, is that CarPlay isn't that great.
Yeah.
The fact that CarPlay still, whenever someone sends you a text or you reply to a text, it takes over the entire screen. Why? Why does it take over the entire screen? That makes zero sense. It doesn't need, you're coming up to an intersection, you need to turn left, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need to reply to this text with my voice. And then you start talking and you're like, oh no, what do I do? What do I do? Because you can't do anything because they haven't updated car screen. It's not like CarPlay is like this awesome, like wonderful, perfect thing. It's sort of a mess, and they don't really.
Especially if you're using it wirelessly. If you're using, and the same is true for Android Auto. If you're using either one of them wireless, without plugging it into a USB port, oh boy, are they? They're shaky. They often lose connection, and they're not good.
Go wonky. It's it's not like these are great systems. It was the best that was available, and now everyone's very comfortable with it. And now the automakers need to make sure that they create systems that people are comfortable with before they say, hey, we're just not going to do this anymore. Because right now, it's still, for most cars, it's still the best option for what people want to do, because it has everything they want. They have 3 different cars. Every car has a different system, and they're like, if I just plug in my phone and it has my Google Maps or it has my Apple Maps, it has my my where I want to go, then it's going to work.
Yeah. All right. Finally, we've got a couple of questions from M. Burns. First
Mr.
one.
Burns. Sorry.
Hey, you never know. Could be him.
I hope it's Mr. Burns.
Hey, M. Monty. Yeah.
Montgomery Burns.
Yeah.
Sorry, M. Burns. We're apparently children.
Mr. Burns is still looking for a PHEV, a plug-in hybrid, and wanted to ask if we'd recommend for or against a CarMax plug-in hybrid if one became available. I hate dealing with dealerships, and CarMax occasionally has models on our working list. What do you give up with a used PHEV? The used PHEV rules from the IRS are dumb. Well, it's actually not from the IRS. It's from Congress. They put those rules in there. A used EV has to be at least 2 years old and under $25,000. Ridiculous right now. Other thoughts? So I've never bought anything from CarMax. Have you?
Yeah, I've never bought anything from CarMax. I've bought stuff from like something that's kind of similar. I bought something from Shift. I bought 2 cars from Shift. In fact, my BRZ's from Shift. And the reason we bought it because they're like this little startup, and they're not little, but they're little-ish startup, and they're in the Bay Area and a couple other cities. But they would just bring the car to your house so you could test drive it. And if you didn't like it, they would just take it away. And if you liked it, they just leave it, and the person would have get an Uber and go home. Yeah. And you can sign all the paperwork on an iPad. And because my wife and I our schedules are so bonkers. That trying to let's get together now, let's go to a place and do it. Yeah. Plus, if there's no hassle, no one's hassling you. There's no issues with we ended up getting the Hyundai. We had to go to a dealership, and the lady was very nice, but my wife also prefaced everything with, my husband is an automotive journalist. He has a lot of followers on Twitter and Instagram, and at that point they're like, oh,
don't mess with us.
Yeah, I mean, she said it in a very nice way, but as like, oh, hey, yeah, this is what my husband does, so he knows about all this car. She's very nice about it, but I think the dealership took it as a threat. So I mean, if it's less of a pain in the ass than a dealership, like you just walk in, or like, this is how much the car is worth. Okay, goodbye, and you just leave, and they're not trying to get you to put like undercoating or other ridiculous junk on your car. Sure.
Yeah. And to the question of what you give up with a used plug-in, probably not a whole lot. It depends. I mean, it's basically the same as buying any other car. When you're buying used, you probably want to get it inspected. I know that with plugins now, Mannheim Auctions, which is owned by Cox Automotive, they now have a testing procedure. You test the state, test the condition of batteries when the cars go through the auction facility. And so they generate a battery report. I think CarMax probably buys some of their vehicles through Manheim. Most dealers, but Manheim's the biggest auction provider for used cars in the U.S. So a lot of dealers, buy their used inventory through Manheim. And these are vehicles that have been traded in by dealers that, maybe didn't want to turn around and resell them or recondition them. They send them to Manheim. They do the reconditioning and everything, auction them back off to dealers. So ask if there's some kind of battery condition report. With a plug-in hybrid, it's going to be less of an issue than it would be for a battery electric, because it's still, at heart, a hybrid. And the battery is going to be used differently than it is in a battery electric vehicle. So you're probably going to be okay there, as long as everything else about the car is fine. The IRS rules, for the tax credit, for up to $4,000 tax credit. What they're trying, the 2-year-old thing is they wanted to make sure that people aren't just buying them and flipping them. So the vehicles have to be at least 2 years old. And also they're trying to make EVs more affordable to a part of the market that hasn't been able to get to EVs so far because they've been so expensive. So if you can find a used EV or plug-in under 25, that's where a significant portion of the market is shopping, is, for vehicles under $25,000. So, you may consider it ridiculous. But the whole point of it was to try to get plug-in vehicles into a portion of the market that hasn't really had access to that technology up to this point. And finally, from Mr. Burns, he said he's got a coworker with a 2022 Volvo XC60 Recharge, and was having trouble charging with a 100-foot extension cord at our office. Not surprised.
Wait, extension cord? He was plugging it in through an extension cord?
Yeah.
Well, there's your problem.
Dealer said extension cords will trip cord breaker. If the 2-gallon gas can and a hike to a station is your IC lifeline in a pinch, why can't an extension cord be the same for an EV if the dealer dumb? So, an extension cord, unless you've got like a really big, heavy duty extension cord, a standard extension cord, is going to have some resistance in it.
Yeah, it's going to get all warm.
Yeah, it's not a good idea, especially, 100-foot cord, not recommended for, you're pulling a lot of current through there. So from a safety perspective, it's not a good idea to try to charge with a cord that long. I've used shorter cords, like 25-foot cords, to reach from, before I got my charger installed, to reach from where the outlet was in the garage, to vehicles parked in the driveway. But anything more than that is generally not recommended for safety reasons. It's essentially, it's a fire hazard. So yeah.
Wait. Like, what amperage do you think you should, like a 20 amp rated extension cord?
At a minimum. I mean, 20 amp, that's a 40 amps is 9.6 kilowatts on a 240 volt. If he's pulling, he's probably plugging into just a regular wall. Yeah, I would recommend, at probably at least a 30 amp cord. Right. If you get a cord rated for 30 amps, then that might be okay. Right. I'm not sure what, I can't remember on the Volvo, I think they have a dual voltage charge cord that comes with it. So it can run on 120 or 240 with different tips on it. And if you're just plugging it into a 120 volt outlet, you probably want at least a cord rated for at least 30 amps, preferably more. If you can find a 40 amp cord. But even at 100, even at 100 feet, it's going to be.
That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot of, that's a long way for electricity. I know it sounds ridiculous and it does sound like the dealer's being a dum-dum, but no, the reality is, even like when you get the cars, I remember some of them were like, do not use an extension cord with this charger. Mm-hmm. Do not, with this plug-in hybrid or this EV. Even the old EVs like the i3 and the e-Golf and stuff. They're like, don't use it. You have to plug it directly in. And so it was, yeah. So yeah, and those higher amperage extension cords, they're not cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got a 60 amp, just like it's only like 6 feet long, and it was like $70 or something like that. Like, you have to start looking on like RVs, like look in the RV section.
Yeah. So, it is a genuine safety hazard.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to be using a 100-foot cord to charge your plug-in.
I wonder how hot that cable got.
Probably pretty hot. Yeah. I mean, it's not impossible to melt an extension cord, especially if it's a typical light duty extension cord, like most people use.
Really thin one with the 6 little things at the end with the dual prong instead of the grounded prong.
Even a standard, grounded cord. I've used those, and you pick up one of those while you're trying to charge a vehicle. It gets warm.
Yeah.
So
it's not
a good idea. The last thing you want is your cord melting or your car catching fire or anything like that.
Especially at work. You don't want to be a guy to burn down the office.
Yeah.
Or maybe you do. I don't know. I don't know what your work environment is. Bill burned down the office. Good job, Bill. I don't know.
It'd be like Office Space.
Yeah.
Let me see. What's a 25-foot heavy duty extension cord?
They're not cheap.
At Home Depot? Let's see. Indoor, outdoor. Let's see. And then 30 amp. Yeah. So a 25-foot 30 amp. Okay. This is a NEMA L630. So it's a twist lock 240 volt.
Which probably is more than what you're looking for, but
yeah. Let's see, voltage. Okay, 120. Here we go. You're looking about $50-$60.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
Yeah, there's one that's $100 for shore power. So that's for again, that's another twist lock one for an RV.
Yeah.
So
it's a bummer that you can't charge it. Apparently, you just can't charge your XC recharge at work. Your XC60 recharge at work because
unless you can find an outlet closer,
or you're gonna have to find a closer outlet, or just buy a really expensive cable. I mean, how much is gas again? Too much. I mean, if he's in California, he'll probably pay for itself in like 2 weeks.
All right. So with that, let's call it a show, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.